man, I'm glad we connected. I love the album Peace Vibes. Love what you're doing. And as I said, I have never, since the beginning of the show in 2011, I have never held back my bias for the vibes. I absolutely love it. It's just such a
Well, we openly accept your biases here. Thank you.
I mean, it's
I,
like, why have food without condiments? And that's what the vibes are. It's a condiment to a wonderful meal. Sauce and pickle. So yeah, it's great to meet you. Let's get into it. And before we get into the album, I want to know, 5 years ago, this pandemic was completely changing our lives, especially musicians.
right.
How did you get through that period, and how has it changed the way that you approach music and life today?
Well, thank you for a great question. I think all of us were affected by that, no matter what we do. And I was teaching at the time. I was still working as a professor, and we had to make that transition, and everything was online and all teaching composition. But I was, at the State University of New York, New York. I was also teaching at the University of Hartford on Vibe. So in getting all, managing all the equipment, I got my technical chops up a notch or two during that. And, I suffered like everybody else, just the absence of personal contact. It's really wonderful to, be in the room with somebody and feel and see the reactions and to comments that you make and have an exchange. We all miss that, but you adapted and I adapted. Um, so it was difficult but informative, and in a certain way, there are certain technical things about it that were actually a little easier to teach. For instance, if I taught three students at a time in a composition seminar, and instead of gathering around the piano and squinting at I could put everything online. I could point to exactly what measure, what note, everybody could see it and I can manipulate. So that was sort of facilitated teaching in a little way. But I had to adapt. Mostly, I just missed the social contact like everybody.
Yeah.
And during that period, we all had artistic things that we did. I wrote a piece called "We'll Get Through This," and it's on the last album that Origin put out. It's called "Vibes on a Breath," and that's a different piece, different album. But that was one of the consequences, or one of the things that came about because of the pandemic. Artists all did different things.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
it was an interesting period of creativity, you know.
Well, and it was interesting too, because cats like Emma Cohen just absolutely blew up, because of
Right.
being online all the time. There was a lot of people that grabbed onto this, and all of the stars aligned, and it became a moment of going to another place. So yeah, it was interesting.
Right.
Um, I will tell you personally, I did many more interviews than I ever did before during that time period. And my kids were in middle school, and I would play interviews on speaker. And just the strength and positivity of the jazz community was such a wonderful mental health piece for me and my kids. And I'm always going to be grateful to how wonderful and triumphant, no matter how dark it was, especially in like Brooklyn and places like that, where everybody was
Right.
stacked on top of each other and couldn't get out. So that was kind of
Where you're from?
I'm from Kansas City.
From Kansas City.
Yeah, I've
My
tried to
wife
get
is
out a couple
my wife
times.
is from Springfield, actually.
You what?
My wife is from Springfield, Missouri.
Interesting. Okay. Interesting. And you're in Denver, correct?
No, no, I'm in New York.
Oh, you're in New York. Okay. I saw it mentioned Denver. Okay. You're in New York. Okay. And we'll get into those layers. We'll
Okay.
peel back all of those layers. And
Okay.
before we get that far back, I want to get into Peace Vibes. I love this album.
Thank you.
What was kind of your artistic vision? What were you going for with this album?
It was a reflective, album where I didn't want to overplay, and yet still let arranging be a big part of it. I consider myself probably even more of a writer than an arranger than a player. I mean, I just love to do that. The last album, Bribes in the Breath, was four horns. The concept there was because I was a trained trumpet player. That was what I did at the conservatory. I sort of always breathe with the instrument and I play that way. So that was the concept of that. I took that concept further, but without all the voicing of four horns. And and one of the things that I love to do is have the absence of a guitar or piano. Now, I certainly love pianists. I love guitarists. I play with them all the time. But when they're not in the band, you're responsible for all the company. and changing the harmonic palette and reacting rhythmically and harmonically. You're always engaged. You're not, okay, I took my solo and now I can put my hands behind my back and check out the other guy's blowing. And you're always engaged. So and I like to I really love having that exchange to be supportive of a soloist, to bounce off to get some of those ideas that and perhaps change them a little bit to offer support to what the soloist is trying to say. And on this album, Brad Good is a pretty amazing trumpet player,
Yeah,
very interesting, very strong jazz
man, I love his
personality
stuff.
and player.
Yeah,
And it was really fun to work with him. We're
yeah.
playing again in a few weeks. So
So take me back to your beginnings. Where were you born and raised, and how did the vibraphone grab your fancy?
well, that was a fluke instead of an accident. I'm raised in New Jersey, in Bergen County, New Jersey, and sort of getting in a little trouble, so here and there, and was hanging out with the sort of the wrong gang and all that, as they say. So my mother said to me, "You're going to join the drum corps in town." Because I'm always banging on the desks, right? And so at school, right? And get out of this gang. We're gonna sort of. She forced the change, so I joined the drum corps, and they had no more drums, so they gave me a bugle, and I became a bugle player. Then I got to high school and I played trumpet. And then, okay, what am I going to do when I grow up? I got accepted at Eastman as a trumpet major. So I practiced a little bit and that was that. But before that, before I went away to school, I was getting the trumpet soldered together because I had a marching band accident. I was standing next to the tuba player. This is in high school, right? And I hit the tuba and the trumpet got banged up and went to the music store. And while I was waiting for it to be soldered together, there was a vibraphone in the store window, a little Genco vibraphone. It's not a fancy instrument, right? So I started noodling around on the thing while we were waiting. My parents were there. They heard that and said, "He seems to like that. Maybe it sounds better. Maybe it sounds better than the trumpet." And they put a down payment on this thing, was about $300, which was a lot of money for them at the time. And it showed up for Christmas 3 months later. That's how I got started in the vibraphone. They just took a chance on this thing. So I played it at Eastman. It was in my dorm room. I wasn't a percussionist. I was a trumpet major, but I sort of played on the side, and I started to play with the jazz ensemble, and it became a thing. And I never really studied officially. I'm not a formal percussionist. A lot of composition and theory, of course. Um, but that's how I got started in the vibes. And then I went to grad school, and I said, "Oh, I had the key to the building," so I started practicing like late. And
Yeah.
then Gary Burton came to town and did a clinic. This was at Ohio State at the time. And I said, "Well, that's cool. Wow." And I started practicing. This is after I graduated. So I'm a rather late bloomer
Yeah.
in this thing. And then I got the gig with the George Shearing Quintet, which was really fortuitous and a great education for me just in terms of just general musicianship. Just he was quite something.
Oh, he was amazing. So
Amazing.
let me ask you this: Who were who were influences when you really grabbed onto the vibraphone? Who were you watching? Who were some people that really swayed the way that you progressed and evolved on the instrument?
Now, I'm not trying to be canny here, but Art Farmer, Clark Terry, Cannonball Adderley, Jim Hall, Bill Evans, and maybe Milt Jackson.
Yeah.
And I always looked at Gary as soon as Gary Burton came on the scene. He says, "Wow, that's just extraordinary what this guy is doing with the instrument." But musically, I was listening to sort of Chet Baker kind of stuff. I was listening to horn players that were uh, they just spoke to me in a different way, again, because of the breath.
Yeah.
Milt Jackson's the closest one that, of all those people, of all the vibraphonists that are around, that played like that. And Gary Burton once told me, which was startling, so, well, Milt Jackson did more to teach us all about mallet dampening than anybody. And of course, Gary was wonderful at that. But just the way Milt phrased was more like a horn player. So he was just his way of turning a phrase was captured my attention. But mostly, man, I was a Clark Terry fan,
Yeah. Yeah.
Mumbles and, you know,
Yeah.
Tread Ye Lightly and all those songs. I used to love to hear Clark Terry play. Not, I was a trumpet player, but not Maynard Ferguson kind of,
Yeah.
or like a high screech thing. I was into more, subtle melodic playing. So
Yeah. I remember early on, it just sparked in me. My love of the vibraphone began with Bags and Train. When I heard that album,
yeah,
just the way that thing from start to finish unfolded was amazing.
yeah, it's a great accent, and it's so many different ways to play it. Now I
Yeah.
play four mallets. I love to use harmony and color things as I indicated. But you can't. I taught a class last night at NYU, and one of the things like one of my mantras is, honor thy mother, honor thy melody. So no matter how fancy you get with all this four mallet stuff, if you can't deliver a cohesive line that makes sense and is melodic, and that's where the narrative of Western music is carried on the melody. Always get that out first. So sometimes it's a bit of a distraction to hear too much texture, and you have to
Yeah.
remember what the basic point is, just to deliver a line. If you can then flush things out and add a little bit more color and interest and contra emotion or whatever you do, great.
Yeah.
But that's sort of my approach. Hopefully that I can do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. So let me ask you this. You mentioned George Shearing. You've played with a lot of people on the bandstand. What did you learn from the legends and luminaries that helped you with the way that you approached not only the instrument, but your music career?
That's a very it's a very broad question for me to answer. So I'm going to maybe have to go at it at a couple of different angles.
Break it down. Absolutely.
First of all, just the sheer melodicism and sheer musicianship of Chief, we called him Chief, was extraordinary. Uh, I was into playing four mallets. I couldn't do that with George. I was holding four, I was playing two. We played Lullaby Birdland every night in every country, and or wherever we were going. And I sort of get bored with it, but not really, because he was always uh, totally focused on landing that musical phrase. So the kind of subtlety and consistency of his musicianship just it seeped into you. And the phrases in George's band, the quintet was famous. The music would say, if you read the music, da dee da dee da dee da dee dum dum, because he goes dun dun dee da 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 dee da dee da, and you had to play along with that
Yeah.
like every night. And it was totally, it was certainly in time, but it was so relaxed, so out of the beat. And so you listen incredibly intently just to make it, and unison with guitar. I remember the first night, always the first night in the gig, you're like, you didn't rehearse. You just listen. There's people in the audience. You're trying to, the energy I spent listening in that band was incredible.
Yeah.
And it taught me about ensemble and respect for just honoring the music.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So, what is it that's been a consistent motivator for you to evolve and to be a part of this jazz community, of this music community? What is the motivation for you?
well, it certainly is not money and fame. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to, have been a professor for a long time, and that's been great. But the motivation is the music, and to be a part of the jazz community. I'm honored to be a small part of the jazz community that I am. I've always felt, Joe, that I've been an outlier, which is, I've accepted that in this community. I do a lot of things. I got pretty interested in tango for a while. I have a lot of other interest in life that I'm engaged in. I'm a pilot. I fly for the Coast Guard. I do a bunch of different stuff. I'm a dad, and now I'm a grandfather. Like all of us. So I've been sort of in and out of the jazz community over these years. Sometimes I have a project. I go out and play a tour and get really, and then I sort of go away for a while. But I'm always grateful to be even considered to have made some, modest contribution to this field and to be part of that, the fabric of what we call the jazz community. It's a pretty amazing thing.
Yeah. So, when you have this dream of being a musician, of getting into this music, there's this world you construct in your mind of, I mean, anybody that has a dream of entering the arts, there's a dream of what you think it's going to be like, what your career is going to be like. What's the difference between the dream that you had of this music life and the actual music life that you've lived? What's been the difference between the dream and reality?
I can answer that question for me, the way it unfolded for me, not the way you're asking it, which is, I think, the way a lot of younger people look at it. I don't know if I ever had a dream.
Right.
I mean, I just sort of was, this is fun. Okay, let's go there. That's fun. Let's do that. Oh, I see something, I go to it, and music was part of that. And sort of one thing led to the next, and all of a sudden, fortunate enough to playing in some very nice venues with some very talented people, But it's not that I ever had that dream when I was 9 years old. I'm going to be or else, kind of.
Yeah.
I just never did that. And I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up,
I love it.
but it's okay,
Yeah.
In terms of now the way I think you really asked the question, I don't know. It's such a crazy business and field. I don't, we all have students and who would advocate going into this bizarre profession? My wife is a modern dancer. I mean, it's even worse, right? How do you, but you feel an obligation if you have acquired some skills and some, perhaps intuition or something along the way to share that. And that's what I want to do. That's very gratifying, just to help somebody um, prepare themselves to attack this, not attack is the wrong word, but just to grow and expand as an artist. That's, I'm speaking about my teacher self, but um, I never had that kind of goal. I want to be a musician.
Yeah.
It just sort of happened. I felt I wanted to communicate to people somehow. That seems to be innate. I want I'd like to connect. I always felt that kind of connection, and there's lots of ways to do that. And if I didn't play the vibraphone, it could be violin or ocarina or something else, you know.
Yeah. I get it. I totally get it. So, you're in a position as an educator too, to take all of these years of experience in this jazz canon, this music canon, and you get to teach them not only about the instrument but about music. What is it that you really want your students to get from you about this world of music?
um, I want them to enjoy the experience as they become increasingly articulate. I want them to feel the joy of communication, of landing that phrase. We do it with words, of course, and you have a conversation, a meaningful conversation with your friend at lunch. Sometimes it's meaningful, sometimes it's not. But when you have that exchange, it's very satisfying, and that's what I want is to help people become astute musicians, articulate enough, master some techniques, uh, control their thinking, edit their phrases in such a way that they can land a phrase and it reaches somebody. That's a purely musical level. Nothing to do with business, nothing to do with success, or anything like that. But just the satisfaction of doing that is what still drives me. I mean, that's what we all do it for. You do
Yeah.
it for love, I guess,
I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah.
So, why do you love this art form we call jazz?
Oh, it's spontaneity of it, the creativity of the typical answers, but um, the inventiveness of it and the communication of in real live time with another artist. This is an old argument in the jazz world. Hot lick players, the two tenor wars, the contest, the cutting contest, who can outbop you. That's great fun. It's great for building the chops, great for building your ears and stuff. But it's a little forceful sometimes. To run your hot licks and impress somebody is like the antithesis of what I want to do.
Yeah.
like I have a little bit of that in my pocket too, but I try not to, you know, I try to be open to the moment more. And sometimes that's failure, that it means you fall down. And then so that's what I really love about it. And it's also manipulating so many things. Manipulating is a tricky word because we do manipulate words when we want to communicate, and you have to formulate a cohesive idea. So in that sense, manipulating a lot of musical parameters, not just the melody and the harmony and the rhythm, but just being conscious of all the dynamics and various textures and timbres that are going on, and the interplay and the contrary motion, and and come into this fabric on so many levels and understand as much as you're capable of understanding what's going on, and then find a way that you can contribute. Sometimes the best way to contribute is to put your hands behind your back and say, sounds beautiful.
Yeah, that's it. Do you remember the first live jazz show you saw that blew you away in those
Gosh.
formative years?
I remember Sir Rashawn Roland Kirk, play like a
Yeah,
couple horns at a time. It was in a shopping mall someplace on some
that would
platform,
be a
where
trip.
he had his band, and I said, whoa. I remember hearing Billy Taylor. That was pretty amazing.
Yeah,
Um, and then when I came to Eastman, as a trumpet major, I didn't know anything. I mean, I didn't. So hearing the jazz artists that came in to that band, and to that, Chuck Mangione was the jazz band director at the time. And then my arranging teacher was Ray Wright, who was fabulous. But he would bring in, I sort of came out of nowhere, and then I'm like, and Oliver Nelson's in the band conducting, and he came to, and that was very informative to hear those kind of things. So I'm sort of a late bloomer. I'm not one of those, as I said before, people that started really young and I'm going to do this. But I've been fortunate to play with some very fine artists along the way.
yeah,
And as long as I have the courage, and I think if I really work hard, I can get up to that level. I know I'm going to ride. When I get in the bandstand, I know I'm going to be, you know, ready to communicate.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, Ted, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you: family, friends, fans, everyone on the bandstand, all of your students, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
That's a fair question. Um, I have confidence in what I do. I think ultimately I will probably pan out as a better composer, because there's a whole life ahead there for me. I feel that. But mostly I would hope that I'd be considered a student, and humble enough to realize that I'm just a contributor to all this. And but I try to look at this beautiful life and let it influence me, and things come through and they show up in a musical form.
Yeah,
That's it. But so I know I'm trying. I have confidence in what I do, as I said, and a certain amount of prowess and all that, and I'm proud of it, and I've worked hard. But hopefully, I would like to be thought of as being willing to learn.
yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
So, if anybody wants to pick up Peace Vibes, any of your previous work, catch you live, any of the good business, where do they go?
Thank you for asking. My website is simple enough. It's tedvibes.com.
Okay.
And right on the first page, there's a link to where you can hook up with Peace Vibes. Origin Records, OA2 Records is also a good place to get that. And there's a lot of other information on the website, about the vibraphone and teaching, and some educational philosophy I have, and a lot of different things. So that's where I'd start.
Right
Thank
on.
you.
I will put that link in the show notes. Ted, this has been an absolute joy. I'm so glad that I met you, that we've interviewed, that we got through it. It's been wonderful. Wonderful stories. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Take care and good luck. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I love it.